got a hand for you from 7 Mile Casino in San Diego. It's
Ah,
a
I have not played there,
it's a
funny
good
enough.
room. It's a pretty good game.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is that one of is that the place that changed their name because they got shut down for a while or
Yeah, it used to be Village Club. Now it's 7 Mile. It's a great game. The only thing is that it's small. They're kind of capped to the number of tables.
By the way, I'm going to tell you
So,
if you guys want an interesting story in money laundering, if any of you guys are Ozark fans, and I would assume I don't know for sure that this has something to do with the Gal Efridge situation. I read the complaint and it sounded similar, but my understanding of what had happened at 7 Mile, or whatever it was called before, and this will happen. You can do this, and you can still do this, and I know because I wired money to the hustler in order to play in the game. So most casinos will have players' banks. So, I got my money. You could bring cash to the casino, play a bunch or play a little bit, and then deposit your chips into the players' bank and then draw a check, a casino check from the players' bank. And that's how I think that people try to launder money through casinos. The story at 7 Mile was that this was back maybe 10, 15 years ago. I think that there were some bookies and stuff like that. And then they were allowing people that owed the bookies, they were allowing other people to deposit in this guy's player's bank account. And then he was withdrawing the casino checks. These are all techniques to get money like on the books. But that's what happened. It kind of reminds me of that. So,
right. I think you're talking about Palomar.
maybe I'm calling.
But
Maybe.
they're two very similar vibes, Village Club and Palomar. I think Palomar shut down and Village Club rebranded as 7 Mile. I don't
Oh, okay.
know the specifics for sure, but yeah.
Okay. So what's the game that you're playing here?
Yeah, it's a 5-5 game,
Okay.
300 to 1,000 cap.
Okay.
And our effective stacks are $1,000. This is like the first orbit when I sit down.
Okay.
So folds to us on the button, and we have King of Hearts, Ten of Hearts.
All right. So hero, King of Hearts, Ten of Hearts on the button, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And we pop it to 20. It's a standard open.
Okay.
And small blind, big blind call.
Both call. Okay.
Yeah.
It's about $60, maybe
So,
less than that because of the drop, right?
right, right.
Yep.
I was gonna ask you, like, do you ever factor that in? Like,
Well, you absolutely should factor it in.
okay,
Well, you factor it in where, and I've talked about this before too, where even though my win rate was very, very high when I was playing Commerce 510, I still think looking back that I probably wasted a lot of money over limping. I mean, the drop wasn't that high as it is now, but if people are not familiar with Southern California drop, I think it's 8 by the end now, right? With the jackpot.
it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no matter how big the pot is. So if you went 15 and then a guy called, they're going to take 8 out of 30. So you can play that out where if somebody limps in and you over limp on the button and then the blinds check, they're going to take 8 out of 20 once it goes to the flop, or they take 7 out. And then I don't know, sometimes they do one on the turn and one on the river, but it
Yeah.
definitely comes into play. Also, too, I mean, you should always chop in these games, but if somebody's not chopping, yeah, I mean, you would think that should always be raise or fold. But they also take a modified drop too. So even when you don't see a flop, some money is being taken out as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Like at this point, like if we chop, the small blind owes $1 still
hmm
in this place. So, ready for the flop?
sure.
So you get a flop of deuce of hearts, deuce of spades, three of clubs.
Okay.
And right off the cusp, we get the small blind donking into us for 45
So small blind donks for 45. Okay.
and big blind folds.
Okay.
And in this spot, like I just feel like he's just really capping his range. Like this to me just screams like fours through nines.
hmm
Um, maybe some like 4 or 5, I guess, some of the time. But I think that folding our hands certainly viable. I think calling is bad, and I think that raising is best. And I wanted to know what you thought about that.
Well, you can absolutely attack people that lead into the preflop raiser on these types of boards, especially when, I mean, you know, they're not supposed to have a deuce right here out of the small
Right.
blind, but they might. But I mean, the chances that they do and lead are very, very unlikely. And sometimes you'll actually see somebody donk here with nothing. Yeah, a lot of times too, on a two flush board, they might have a flush draw. So you start to think about what are the other hands that they might have. It could be a small overpair. One of the things I used to say, and I think it still has some viability, is I used to say, well, when I played against people when I had this Garrett-like image and was scared of me, I actually like to build pots up early on and put sort of the fear of kind of death in them, meaning like, oh, they're going to play
Right.
for stacks here. So let's take a look at the differences. Like if you wanted to if you wanted to continue with this hand, you could call, but then a lot of times the turn is going to be sort of checked to you. So let's say the turn's like an offsuit 9 and they check to you. Unless you're going to be using like ridiculous overbet sizing, which you could, they are more willing to hold on. Your opponents are more willing to hold on as the pot is smaller than if you were actually raised now. You might very well get them to release on a disconnected overcard to whatever pair they're holding on the turn. So I could see it. I could see a raise, and then back in the day, you would see people donk fold all the time. I don't know how
Hmm.
prevalent that is now. I mean, you've got a backdoor flush draw and two overcards, so I could see it. I mean, I kind of like to do this with a little bit more going on. Like if the board came out 9 deuce 3 with the 9 of spades, and I had like Jack 10 of spades. You
Okay.
know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like this is just a, was a great spot to raise, and I feel like I'm doing so, pinning my ears back and kind of barreling across most turns and rivers. I think
Hmm.
that any hand that hangs on the flop, I'm gonna get to fold
Now,
by the river most of
with that being said, and some people in the live chat also rightly say that the hand is already off the rails when the small blind cold calls here because it probably
the time.
shouldn't be
Yeah.
cold calling at all. But you're actually not that deep to make this play, and what I mean by that is that I would like it if you were like 1500 because if you go to like 175. I guess you're deep enough. Basically, what I'm saying is, if you go to 175 and make a heavy 2/3 bet on the turn, you're going to be left with less than a pot size bet here. If you were to go say 250 to 300 on turn, whereas
Right.
if you had like 1500, even if you make the same bet sizing, I feel like it's scarier because people will have more money behind. If you follow what I'm saying, so I might like to be a little bit deeper in this particular spot. Sounds to me like
Okay.
though you went for it.
Yeah, I did. I popped it to 125. So a little bit on the smallish side, I guess, kind of like reiterating on your
Well,
thoughts, is I'm trying to leave enough in the tank
right, and you
to
can
have fold equity on the river.
sure, and you can also make the case that you're doing that so that you have those bullets left, and maybe 125 doesn't change anything from like 185, 175, something like that. My only contention is I've actually seen people donk fold to the larger sizing right away. So this whole line, I like raising larger when deeper.
Okay.
Starting this play like at 1500, but okay, so you make it 125.
Yeah, and he goes ahead and makes a call. And so I have the pot at 310,
310. Uh-huh. Okay.
and we get a pretty good turn. We get the 10 of diamonds.
Wow, okay.
So small blind checks, and I just go for a value bet 150.
I was going to say, so I assume now you are changing the way that you were going to play this, right?
Right, right. Obviously, we kind of run into top pair here. I'm obviously want to
I
max
mean,
value
you should
now.
have the best hand here almost always, right?
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. I think we can completely write off like most of the ace deuces, all of like combos of threes. So I just think, we're gonna go for gold.
So I do want to confirm though too, because I think this is going to play into it's entirely a rainbow board, right? Deuce of hearts, deuce of spades, three of clubs, 10 of diamonds, and you raise to 125 versus the donk lead. Small blind calls, turns the 10 of diamonds, small blind checks, and now you bet 150.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And the turn does complete the rainbow.
Okay. Yeah, I can get on board with that. I might even go a little bit on smaller than this, but this is fine. 150. Okay. I might have gone like 130, 140, and then gone for more value at the end.
Okay.
Um, if you rope them in at 130 and then they call, you can get even more value on rivers. I mean, and the thing is that like if you get called with a little bit of a smaller sizing, and then you get a disconnected river, you can just go like same bet again. Like if the river's an offsuit jack, if you go like 130 to call and the pot's like 570, you could go like 150, 130 to 150 on the river on like an offsuit jack or an offsuit queen,
Right,
something
right.
like that. So you bet
Okay.
150, okay.
Yeah, 150, and the most ridiculous thing happens, and the small blind clicks it to 300. And I just thought like this is really sus. Like the only hand that I think makes sense here is like the last remaining combo of tens.
Or if he had a deuce, I
Or if
guess.
he does have a deuce, I guess, yeah. And he just opted to like donk lead 2/3. So I was just kind of confused. I just kind of simplified down and just flatted here.
So
Didn't
when
really.
you bet 150 and he makes it 300, you put 450, so it's 760, 150 for you to call, and then you have position. Sometimes I look at these spots sometimes, not necessarily against this line, but when I'm getting really good turn pot odds and I have a mediocre hand, I'll look at this from out of position. I'll be like, oh, I'm getting 5 to 1. Sometimes, how sometimes like you bet the turn and somebody in position like raises you, like clicks it.
Hmm.
And, they could have two pair, but they could also be raising for a showdown. I look at that spot when somebody clicks me and be like, oh, I'm getting
Right.
5 to 1 here. Like, am I good here 1 out of 6 times where it might go check, check? Plus, I might have, some additional equity too. Like if I had an overpair against two pair. That's how I look at it from out of position. Here in position, he's going to be forced to bet at you again. Let me ask you this question. What if he had just used like more standard sizing here?
Oh man, I would have been a little bit more in the blender, I think. I feel like it is kind of like one of those things you talk about, like a reverse blockish almost, but then it wouldn't be for that bigger sizing. So I don't really know. I still think that we kind of have to carry on here because something is obviously suspect about his line.
Let me just read a quick comment. I think this was actually by the previous caller. Jonathan Santiago says, were you planning on using that sizing if you were bluffing? Think you should bet bigger on the turn. Now, theoretically, there's nothing wrong with that comment. But what I would say is that yes, I would change because this is an exploitable line where I might be fairly out of balance with larger bets as bluffs on turns on disc, like if the turn was like a queen, right?
Yeah,
To get the folds. And here we've sort of switched into value mode. I'm not really concerned about balance. I just want to rope the guy in here. So it sounds to me like you called sort of out of curiosity.
right. Yeah. So I call here. Um, I don't know. I still kind of think I have the best hand here a fair amount of the time.
I mean, you wouldn't think that somebody would like check raise with. So what is this? Like I said, what is normally a donk like on this board like this would be like an overpair that really should always be lower than yours, right? Because you should be
Hmm.
three bet off. So you wouldn't think that like sevens or eights here would min check raise turn. You have king 10, you're blocking pocket tens, and everything else that's higher should be three bet off. So it's pretty bizarre. So the pot is 9-10, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And he has like 600 left.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
And again, this is kind of just like this small blind, like I don't know. I haven't played with him. This is like the first orbit at the table. Looks like he could be like an OMC type of guy. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't have any
Mm-hmm.
like good authoritative information. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so pot's 9-10. We go to the river and it's like a brick four, like a four of spades.
So the river is the four of spades. Okay. Yeah, that is a fair. I mean, unless he's making some sort of ridiculous play, with some sort of straight draw or something like that. But I don't know if I
Right,
buy into that at all.
right. And so after min clicking the turn, now he checks.
Now he checks. Wow.
And we get the question, do we have the green light here
So
to value that?
he went to 300 and now he checks. I got to be honest with you. I mean, I don't mean to like put this like in some sort of crazy, put the guy on one hand. I would actually be concerned that you might lose to ace 10 here.
Mm.
A guy that bets here on the flop and you raise and he's got backdoors and he's going to call with ace high. Put it this way, like if you actually had an overpair here, like queens or kings, you know what I mean? Jack, even jacks, I think I would bet. I think it's close. And the reason why I wanted to specify too, like on the turn, whether or not there was a backdoor, because I think that that's very prudent. Because you'll see somebody make like a turn check raise on a backdoor, and then you're like, oh well, you know, now the backdoor misses, so there really isn't that much of a need to necessarily bet. That doesn't really happen here. And I think it's just very, very close anyway. So I wonder, because what is check raising turn?
Yeah,
And then
it's
like
really
are
weird.
sevens
Like,
or eights calling a bet? And from your side too, there is no backdoor that you could have picked up and that you now missed. So I love going for thin value, but I might wrap this back, meaning like check it back out of confusion here. You know,
okay, yeah, yeah, I might have pinned my ears back a little too much on this one. I went for it. I just made a bet of $200,
and
just
keeping
trying
it
to get
right.
those
I mean,
calls from nines, eights, sevens.
you're doing what you would have done if he had called on the turn. I mean, obviously, if he calls your bet on
Right,
turn, you're gonna bet the river, right? On this
exactly.
card,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So it's obviously like a very very dinky bet. And by the way, too, this is another one where people are like, "Whoa, what if you get check raised off your hand as a bluff?" Because when you go so small, and my contention here is that it just doesn't happen really enough to worry about. Yeah, sure. I mean, the hero's hand could look very vulnerable, and it would suck to get blown off your equity, but you're just going to find people call down way more than raise bluff here. Um, really, to take that into major consideration, you know.
yeah. I just think this is a clear bet fold. I would very comfortably fold if I got raised on this river.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but villain does call, and
Okay.
then he tables pocket jacks.
Wow. I mean, I guess it sort of makes sense. I mean, it's very
Yeah,
passive pre.
yeah. I just feel like I really got blindsided by that hand. I just never really, put that into
I
his range at any point
mean,
in time.
yeah, that's definitely not a common one. Like I said, what you'll usually see is if we can sort of flip this hand on its back, turn it around. Where I will see this as kind of a stop raise is like, say you see bet the flop for some reason. Let's say that the positions were changed and you were out of position, and somebody in the field called you like on the button, and you
Right,
see bet the flop and he called. You started a backdoor bet, right? And then the turn you hit a 10, so you continue to bet. And then he bumped it up, like clicked you.
right. That would make sense.
Yeah, that's like a stop raise. Like he's trying to like name the price to get a free showdown. This is really strange
Mhm.
because he's out of position, right? It's really
Right. Yeah.
strange.
Yeah. This whole thing was just kind of odd.
Yeah, if for whatever reason, like it just kind of jumps out at me that there's a possibility that you might lose here to ace 10 sometimes too. And then when I look at like eights, nines, and there's no backdoor that missed here, I probably would have checked this one back.
Just because you don't think that we're ever going to get called by eights or nines to like this $200,
Something's weird. Something's
yeah.
weird with the hand. Not only that, it's just I don't know if he has those hands all that much. So it's just like, what does he have here?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just really weird. I mean, sometimes you get into these spots where you can't really figure out what the guy has, and it's just a check back because he could be sent. There's just not enough that can call you. He was
Yeah.
just making some ridiculous play and he gave up on it, right? And then there's the small times where he actually has you beat. And I guess you put this one in that category too.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
anyways, thanks for the call.
All right. Thanks, Bart.
Appreciate it.